Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Welcome to a very special episode of Adventures in Venueland. What's going on? I'm Dave Rettelberger, and along with Paul Hooper, we're doing something a little different today. You know, it's the holiday season, and believe it or not, we're also approaching our 100th guest here on, and we kind of play with that, Paul, because it's 100 guests, we're over 100 episodes, but we're nearing our 100th traditional episode of Adventures in Venueland. And you had an idea for today, if you want to go ahead and share what that is.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun to just gather up our team. You know, we've done stuff kind of like this around the holidays before, and but also I have this kind of memory of, seared in my brain from when I was a kid. And you watch these, sitcoms, and they always do those review episodes, right? Where they're like, remember that one time when, and then it just clips back. So I thought, I was like, that could be kind of fun to remember. It's so hard to believe we're at 100 plus episodes, 100 episodes of our main series. And then, as you mentioned, I think like 20 or 30 bonus episodes on top of that. But that is crazy. And when you're scrolling back through all these, it's like, oh my God, that was 3 years ago. It felt like 6 months ago, and so I thought it would just be really fun to kind of revisit some of our favorite moments. And it might be a good opportunity too for listeners that if they joined us late and maybe they, heard about a coworker who was on, a few months ago, this might give them tips of cool things to go back and check out on some of the earlier episodes.
Absolutely. So let's start things off, because you obviously, you know Paul's voice, you know me, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while. If it's your first episode, what a weird episode for you to start with. Let me just say that. But we have a lot of folks who help support us behind the scenes. So let's kind of just go around the horn real quick, have everybody say hello and kind of what your role is with the podcast, and also shout out there what your day job is, what pays the bills, because it's not this. Megan, you want to start us off?
Sure. Let's start with the job that pays the bills. I currently do marketing for most of the West Coast runs of Cirque du Soleil Big Top shows, which has been quite fun. But since this journey with this podcast has started, my career journey has gone on a wild ride. So this podcast has been a fun way to stay in tune with the industry, first and foremost, for those who are listening. Second, with the podcast, I help do the graphic design and social media. So we'll get into that a little bit later when we start talking about the podcast, but that's pretty much the biggest thing, with also helping Paul brainstorm some of the fun and silly ideas that we've come up with since this journey began in 2020 or 2021. It's been
2020. Yeah. Over 4 years ago. It was crazy.
Yeah. Camille?
Hi, I'm Camille. I am the audio editor of the podcast. I went to school for audio and semi-recently switched careers. I'm the only one here, I think, that's not in this industry, but I am a software engineer right now, and that pays the bills. But I've been here since 2021.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Just right behind us, like episode 5 or something you joined in. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And such an important part of the show that really goes unrecognized. So I appreciate all your hard work. And everybody always starts off in an interview, nobody ever hears this part, but saying, oh, everybody sounds so good. And we're like, don't worry, we have a great team of editors. I say a team of editors because it sounds good, but it's you.
There's Camille, there's Faulkner, there's Camille Faulkner,
Samantha.
All righty. So, hey guys, I'm Samantha Marker. I primarily assist the podcast doing social media for us. When I used to listen to the episodes on a more timely manner, I would also help assist with the copywriting, for our episode descriptions. Hopefully in the future, I'll have more time on my hands and can help out with that again. For my day job, I do social media for SoFi Stadium in Hollywood Park, which obviously includes our stadium and Hollywood Park, the retail and residential district. but also work on social for YouTube Theater and our very owned and operated college bowl game, the LA Bowl.
As we think back to 2020, and Paul and I discussing this back in 2019, even, and probably even a few years before that. I know we talked about it for a while before we got it off the ground.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm sure you've got a couple of favorite memories of not a specific episode so much of a moment, but kind of what you do there for the pod behind the scenes.
Yeah, there's so many, and I like that Megan mentioned that there is this just brainstorming going on constantly. It's kind of really refreshing. I think all of us in our day job, there are numerous parameters, right, of what we can and can't do. And one of the really nice things about the podcast is I think anytime any one of us has an idea, we're like, yeah, let's do it. Like
we're willing to try.
Very little repercussions. It's kind of dangerous. We're just like, yeah, let's go for it. So that is really fun and a great thing. But one thing that I was remembering back, thinking through 100 episodes was early in like 2020, when we were like, all right, let's maybe more seriously start exploring this. Like, is this something we feel like we can get off the ground? What would we call it? What would the format be? How often would we record these? One of the early things was like, what is the name? And I labored over this a lot. I started texting you, Dave, a whole lot. We were bouncing names back and forth. I was trying to think of a name that would be specific to like the industry. So I was like, what are some industry terms? And I could not think of any that came to mind more than vomitorium. And so then at one point on my list, among others, I had adventures in vomitorium, which, if it didn't sound like you're swimming in vomit, could have been a fun name, but we were like, we cannot go with that. That sounds disgusting. But that's a funny thing because that's where the adventures in came from, is that original like vomitoria. I was like wanting something that rolled with that. And then we went with this kind of inventing our own name of Venueland, which sort of has this fun, almost like Candyland aspect. I was sort of imagining like us exploring through, venues, and maybe that was the thought too, with, some of the design elements, was this kind of 80s retro game kind of exploring type of thing. But adventures in venue.
And fun note that you can apply if you are creating your own venue or industry podcast or whatever you're doing. Create your own word. It really helps with the Google searches and people to find you.
So true, right?
So
yeah, we own that word. I mean, that's the best part too. So that's definitely a memory among so many, but that's a kind of a fun one that I think back on is, what if we were adventures in vomitoria? We probably would have lasted 6 episodes.
That would have been it. We'd be done already.
Yeah.
How about the rest of our crew? Anybody else have a behind the scenes story they want to share?
I mean, not so much a behind the scenes story. I just remember when we first launched this podcast, it was during COVID, right? So in the time of looking for more ways to stay connected to the industry with reduced hours, my favorite thing to do was to go on long, hour-long walks, listening to the podcast before we release an episode. And for me, it was cool because I even got to hear an episode from who would, come to be my current boss. So being able to get to know her a little before I started to work for her was a really cool experience. So it just shows, how connected this industry is and how much you can actually get from the podcast.
Wow, that's super cool. Yeah. My favorite me specific memory or audio specific memory is it has to be our Halloween episodes.
Yeah.
Because
so good.
I get to have the most fun and be the most creative in those. So the past 2 Halloween episodes, I'll either use a synthesizer or a keyboard that I own, or like borrow a friend's and just find like the creepiest, weirdest sounds. But I'm doing it for like hours. I'm like going through every single sound and like trying to find the creepiest one. And that's been like just a really fun, creative thing for me. But I really like the point that Samantha made, because as the only person who's not in this industry, I have also found this podcast really motivating and uplifting. Like just editing it, I get to hear the whole thing, obviously, and all the advice still applies, and I find it really motivating.
I love your latest Halloween episode particularly.
They
I
turn
think
out
of
great.
the ghost rattler when you
Yeah.
hear when you start talking about that ghost rattle and you hear this to kind of go back and forth between your ears. Oh my gosh. Definitely go back and listen to that if you haven't. Yeah, it's great.
I'm trying to scare you. Yeah.
I think what everyone else has said is true, and especially just my own career journey the last 4 years. You listen to certain episodes at certain times, and you take away different things at different times within your
So
career.
true. Yeah.
And you can listen to somebody who's a coordinator just starting out and go back to the time that made you want to do this. And then you can listen to like Jahan Blakes, who was a career not therapist, but she really helps give people advice. And you can take that, but then if you listen to it again, maybe the first time you heard something different and then you hear it again. So it's nice to just have that full rounded. You have the GM, you have the coordinator, you just get to listen to everyone's perspective, which I don't think a lot of opportunities out there exist to get that full rounded. But I was also thinking, through this with doing the cover photos, I really, really, really learned the importance of a good headshot.
Yes. I know. And often it's so reactionary, right? Which we don't blame the guests. It's like, oh my gosh, I need a headshot. Oh, you need it in this much time. And then they're like trying to take one on their back patio or hire someone. But you're right.
Or the hair
having one
blends
handy.
into the background.
Yeah. Or there's
the
one
wall
that's
painting.
from 30 years ago or something. They have like dark hair and a goatee, and now they're, silver hair. And so, so yeah,
Or it's taken
that's
from
true.
LinkedIn,
Go get those
MySpace.
headshots. Yeah.
I'm curious what makes a good headshot. What are your tips?
High resolution is first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then making sure your hair and your face doesn't blend into the background when you're trying to crop it out. Because if you can have like blonde hair with a tan wall, it's really hard to see the difference. And then if your hair is not completely tucked to your face, like you have bangs and they go out all the way, hair doesn't really Photoshop correctly in a nice,
Right.
clean way. So sometimes too, and your shoulders, if I don't have the full shoulders, I've Googled people's shirts that match the shirt, and I'll just superimpose some like Google image of a jacket
Someone
so I
else's
can make
shoulder.
sure their shoulders
That's
aren't
great.
missing.
There's some behind the scenes dirt right there.
What about you, Dave? What do you got? You're usually the one digging.
Yeah, one of my favorite things behind. Well, I do love to surprise guests with the stuff that I can find about them on the internet.
I always
there's no
love
shortage
that
of it.
when they say, "Whoa, I didn't tell you I worked at McDonald's back in the '80s," and you're like, "You didn't have to."
But honestly, my favorite thing is when we've been able to be in the same room to do the podcast. I just feel like, especially we've had some really memorable spots again, whether it was, the secret sound studio that's underneath Climate Pledge Arena, to, obviously our one we just recorded backstage at the Fox Theater. But I also love when we did one on a hotel room bed once.
Right.
What city was that? Was that Seattle also?
That was
It
in
was
Seattle,
Seattle,
right? With Liz?
Yeah. Yep.
And I may or may not have slept through my alarm.
Yes.
Megan eternally felt guilty. No, yeah, we were jammed in room 2020 with Liz, coming off of 2020, the haunted room. But yes, that was great.
So yeah,
I agree.
and it's just the stuff that we have to do to pull one of these together, and then I was saying right before we started recording today. That I think I was so excited backstage at the Fox Theater that I accidentally turned my microphone off, and so Camille had to do some magical editing to make pull that one together and make it work. So very grateful for everything that everybody does here, and very grateful for our guests. Right. So let's turn the page a little bit and talk about maybe one of our favorite moments from an episode. Something that really stands out. If there maybe a specific guest or a comment they made, something that kind of stuck with you. So, Paul, you want to kick us off?
Sure. There are so many, and really echoing a bit of like what Megan said, especially in those early days when I was unemployed and I'm hearing people talk about their struggles, and literally like sometimes an hour earlier getting an email from someone saying I didn't get a job or I didn't make the cut, and then recording with someone and hearing them say, oh, I went through this and this to get to where I'm at. I mean, that might as well have been like a personal therapy session for me. Those
were,
first, like,
especially in those early
year or
days.
two. I mean, really. But yeah, there's so many. I kind of struggled to pinpoint one, but I think just because I am if nothing else, a big music nerd, I'm one of those people that loves like getting stuck on Wikipedia and daisy chaining my way into like the history of shoegaze or whatever the heck I happen to find. But I loved Lionel B, which was episode 36, talking to Lionel, who is with Bay Area Productions and Black Promoters Collective, but hearing him talk about promoting these early shows in the early days of hip hop with Run DMC and Bill Graham Productions. I mean, I was just kind of waiting on the edge of my seat, listening to all these really nerdy kind of notes about the history of this industry and some of like where things are now, but you know, where they came from. And I think that one really kind of stood out to me when I was thinking back through them.
So I'm going to tell you how that happened. There was a DJ named Dr. Funk that DJ'd a lot of our popular parties for the high school and younger people's enjoyment in the Bay Area. And so at one of my parties that I was promoting, he played a song from Run DMC, and it was called It's Like That, and That's the Way It Is. And I liked the song, and the song was played on the radio, and it was a hot song. And so I wanted to promote Run DMC at one of my dance parties. So I was just trying to figure out how to do it. So I spoke to a friend of mine. Her name was Cynthia Alexander. She worked at Rainbow Records. It was a record store in downtown Oakland. And she said to me, I know someone that knows Run DMC. And so she introduces me to a guy named Roger Clayton in Los Angeles. And Roger was a DJ who ran this organization called Uncle Jam's Army.
Uncle Jam's Army, okay.
Uncle Jam's Army. And Uncle Jam's Army were like the West Coast version of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So they were a group of DJs and rappers, but they were party promoters. And in Uncle Jam's Army was Egyptian Lover, Rodney O and Joe Cooley.
Yes.
Yeah.
DJ Pooh, and Roger, who was Uncle Jam. And they had a couple of hits out. Uncle Jam's Army did Dollar Freak. But Egyptian Lover, was banging in LA. I mean, he was the LA, he was one of the first LA rappers. And DJ Pooh wrote the movie Fridays. And then there was the LA Posse. They were also in the Uncle Jam's Army. They were the guys who produced a couple of LL Cool J albums. So you had all those talented people in that group. So anyway, Roger drives up to meet me, and he says, look, I can bring you Run DMC. Let's promote the show together. And he said, I promote them already in LA. And so that's how I met him. And so we promoted our first show in June of 1984 at this place called the Richmond Auditorium. And that was my first concert performance. And I went, I like this.
Very nice. Camille?
Yeah. I feel like I'm going off prompt a little bit, and I'm sorry. Like Paul said, it's so hard to choose. Like all of them provide so much, and like very special little nuggets are in every single episode. But something I really love about this podcast is that there's just a wide range of what we can cover. And so I love like when we cover photographers in the industry or the Capua episode.
Yeah. Ancient venues. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. The Wesley Cullen, Puerto Rico episode. Yeah. And then of course, Backstage Bowie, where we covered a dog. Those are a lot of examples, but I just love that all of it applies, to the industry, especially the Capua, like thinking back on like where we came from in terms of venues and in terms of like entertainment. I thought that was so interesting.
Amphitheatres, it's really quite hard to overstate how important they were to Roman society. And that's pretty surprising to us, perhaps, because what went on inside an amphitheatre was really pretty grim. There's nothing about the show that went on there that's good.
Yeah.
And So, people have said, well, how is this possible that these people who did so much, achieved so much, how is it possible that this is how they like to spend their time? Why is it that these did become the most popular form of entertainment?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, quite a surprising aspect of amphitheaters, today.
More ancient venues to come in 2025 for sure. Samantha?
I actually was going to say, Camille, I kind of love what you just said. I agree with you. I think some of my favorite episodes are more non-traditional episodes or our bonus series that we do. I think back to our mental health bonus series. It's so cool to hear from so many different people about, maybe similar struggles that you might go through in your day-to-day role. So our series with Backline was a really good opportunity build some camaraderie with people and knowing that, we put in so many hours and our heart and souls into this industry. So knowing that maybe you're not alone is something, it was a really cool series. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one, I definitely recommend, go listen to those.
Yeah,
absolutely. As I was thinking about the work-life balance piece and how to speak to some of the success stories that I have heard, I think routine is a huge part of it, right? So you do have, again, like this nocturnal lifestyle, right? And so does that mean that means essentially that the other part of your day has to be spent doing the things that you can for yourself, right? Going to the grocery store, moving your body, spending time with your family, if possible, doing the things that make you feel good. And then on the other end, right, you're at work. And so having almost like a reverse routine sometimes for people, but recognizing that that's what it is, this week, I think has been something that I've heard as being successful, really like identifying what I have. And these are the pieces that I have to work with. And so I'm going to set up sort of the way I want to structure my week. Goal setting also, I think, right? As you're sort of navigating, do I want to stay in this industry? And if I do, right, and this is something I'm passionate about, and you spoke to it well, Paul, like there's a lot of really exciting pieces about it, right? And people love it for a reason, and they're there for those reasons. What do I want to accomplish here in terms of, financial goals, things on my resume? Do I want to start working up the ladder and have different positions in the future, that type of thing? I think working with a therapist or a life coach around those bigger, sometimes scary topics to think about and talk about can really help with that work-life balance as you're trying to figure out like what's important to me and where maybe some compromises or sacrifices I want to make to attain those goals.
In the very beginning of this podcast, we were pulling quotes from different episodes and making a graphic about it.
Yeah.
And now, so I was just trying to go back through some of them. And Barry Gables is interesting because I remember when I was in San Jose as basically a team of one or two at times, his quotes about how you're complaining about all these tiny shows like the Moscow Circus or whatnot, and how in the industry, all these tiny little shows that we work on make you a better marketer. And it's interesting when you listen to everyone's episode, everyone does such different things within the industry, but we're all doing the same thing. But all of these things make us such better marketers, well-rounded speakingly, compared to someone who's working in the tech world where you're working on campaigns for one product. We have the ability in this industry to work on so many different things and learn so much about so many different people that I think it's a really awesome thing at the end of the day, which is part of why this podcast is awesome, because we're all talking about just the live entertainment industry, but everyone is so completely different where we learn so much from everybody.
I'm going, why aren't we doing like a million Springsteen dates? Why aren't we doing AC/DC every,
Right.
And what it taught me was exactly what I was saying before. You learn how to sell tickets in any genre for anything. One day I'm doing Motley Crue and the same day I'm doing Amy Grant. And there's no difference in promoting. It's about getting people excited about laying down their money and understanding what their brand is and being true to that brand. I miss sometimes the chances of doing those unique things like the male intellect. I miss opening venues by doing the Moscow Circus. I love the idea when our company got more involved in Cirque du Soleil, not only because the budgets were huge, but they said, yeah, try that. Let's try that. Let's do that. And like I said before, the Belkins were always, we didn't own venues. We made money on one thing, and that was the ticket until you could find other ancillary revenues to make money on. So they were always doing any shows that could fill up an arena. I learned at that time how to sell a show and how to create relationships and how to count on people to help you be successful. So as I was complaining about why aren't we doing all these Springsteen dates, little did I know I was becoming a better marketer because we were doing anything and everything that was entertainment driven, whether it was Say Goodnight Gracie or La Cage aux Folles or Springsteen, or one of my favorites is Motorcycle Racing on Ice. To this day, 40 years later, my hearing is still gone in my right ear from those 2-cycle engines. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, and having promoted both the Moscow Circus and some more than my share of motorcycle events over the years.
Yeah, I mean, Dave and I mentioned that every episode. After we're done recording with the guests will hop off Zoom. Dave and I usually take like a few minutes off, the record, and are sort of like do this little how did that go type thing. There has been this is true. There's been no ones where we're like, ooh, that was rough. But every single one, we're always like, God, like this story is completely different than the other 99. I mean, it's really kind of amazing. I think it talks about the humanity of everyone, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're a marketing coordinator and you're at this, in the same city, just at a different arena, your story is going to be totally different on how you got there, what you want to do after that. I mean, it's just, I love that everything is so unique. It's kind of this beautiful study of the human experience, right?
And it's funny, when you do informational interviews with everybody, young people trying to get in there, like, what do I need to do to get there? And you listen to it and you realize that there's really no one way. Every way is so different. Yeah. It's just what works for you.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And when I think about, all the guests that we've had on, and I'm so grateful for everybody, but sometimes I feel like we're a band who put out their best album as their first album. Because while I love every guest, it was life reaffirming for me when we recorded that first episode. Nina Jackson was our first guest. And Nina opened up in a way that paved the ground for what this podcast could become. Especially during the pandemic, we were home and disconnected. And what brings us together? And here is a woman who's, a legend in this industry. And she's able to not only share her stories and her adventures in venues, but what it was like to enter this industry as a woman at a time that women weren't really respected in the industry. And to share the struggles that she had as a Black woman in this industry. And Megan, kind of like you were saying, it's the things that, everybody's got their different path. It all unites us. And hearing the broad spectrum of voices and what everybody has to say, but the things that kind of unite us in the struggles, because while I may not be able to relate to being a Black woman in this industry, I felt like an outsider, right? There are times that I think we all feel that way, that we all feel like we're disconnected or there's nobody else in the city that is doing what I do. There's nobody here even in this arena who may be doing what I'm doing. I feel so different from the operations team or the booking team or whatever it is.
Sure.
And when you hear these stories of these people and they share, I find it good for the soul. And I remember we recorded the episode and I was tearing up while she was telling some of her stories. It was very moving.
Back when I was at the summit, again, male-dominated industry, more so then than now even. Yeah. Sitting there, and again, it's Mike McGee, it's Russ Simons, it's, all these people. Well, around lunchtime, they would meet in the middle area right there. My office was right there, like looking at them. And they're like, hey, where are we going to go lunch today? Or oh, let's go here, or let's, whatever. And one day I think I was talking to Russ and I was like, y'all are so rude. You just stand there and you're talking about where you're going to go to lunch and you never invite me to go. And he's like, invite you to go? If we're going somewhere and you want to go, just come and go. light bulb,
Yes.
I think the difference in kind of the way men think and the way women think. So from that point on, if I heard them talking about a place, I would yell out, I'm grabbing my purse, I'm coming.
Right, that's it.
Then it became, if y'all don't want me to tag along, then y'all better try to whisper somewhere else, or I don't know, send smoke signals to each other or something. I don't know what y'all gonna do, but if I hear about it, I'm grabbing my purse and I am coming.
But let me, and that's episode 1, by the way. So if you want to check that one out, definitely worth a re-listen. But all that said, Paul, like Paul was saying, we come out of every episode. There are times when I'm, we all have busy weeks, right? Maybe it's a week where you don't want to, you Megan, you don't want to get to doing the post, or Camille, you don't want to get to editing, or Samantha doesn't want, we're all busy. But I get into the podcast and I start talking to people, and I always find some kind of connection. And it's kind of what we get at EVMC when we go to the conference and you see people face to face, and you can share your stories with them in person. And it's just like a little micro dose of that for your attitude, right? It can just kind of remind you that we're not alone out here, that we are connected in some ways. And I've really found people being open and sharing their stories, the good and the bad, to be really meaningful. So on that note, as we kind of wrap this up today, give me, everybody, this is kind of weird, I know. Give me something you're thankful for, right? As we wrap things up today, give me something you're thankful for, holiday wish, some good stuff there. Megan, you start us off.
Oh boy, I was trying to think about this one. It's been a very chaotic last few months, but I think I'm probably the most thankful for my family and helping everybody try and get us all through everything that's going on the last few months.
Samantha?
Yeah. So, really, I'm just super thankful for what's to come for me in 2025. I am starting a new job at the first of the year.
Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. So that's super exciting. And then I'm also getting married next year in 2025. So really, just a lot of really exciting moments to come for me, both on the professional and personal front. So yeah, I'm thankful all around. Like, I can't wait for next year.
Good. I'm happy for you.
Thank
Camille?
you.
Wow, that's amazing.
Hard to follow that one, right?
I know.
Yeah, how transformative is your 2025 going to be?
I hope it's half as good as Samantha's. Yeah, it's been a really hard year and really stressful year for me. And yeah, I was laid off twice in 1 year. It's just been a lot, but my community has really shown up, and my friend group, and I'm just like so grateful. Like they've been so supportive this entire year. And honestly, with any hardship or any stress that's happened, it's all seemed like it's gonna work out. You know what I mean? Like it all seems like I'm dodging bullets or something. Like it seems like all for the best. So I am also excited of the opportunities that are ahead of me. So yeah.
When I think back to something being really grateful for, I'm grateful for people who listen to this podcast and then tell us that how much they enjoy it. I know that seems kind of weird, right? But when somebody does that, like I just sent somebody a friend request on Instagram. They were like, "Oh my gosh, I listen to the podcast all the time, and it's really neat to be able to connect with you." Or Paul and I have been in an elevator before, and people are like, "It's weird to hear you talking in person because I'm used to hearing you in my earbuds all the time." And it's just when people say that, because sometimes it's just Paul and I talking into a microphone. And with a guest, and to actually hear, the people that are listening, and the thing I hear often from people is how much it's helped them, how much they've been grateful for the podcast, and so I don't want to say that as a brag, but I want to say that I'm actually truly grateful that people listen to this, and I'm truly grateful for the time of our guests that they've get into this, and obviously our team that helps put it together, because I really do think it impacts people in a positive way, and the young people that have gotten into this industry that I've talked when I do informational interviews with people, and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking to get into the industry." I said, "Oh, let me tell you a little resource I have for you, and go listen to 100 episodes of my podcast." Paul Hooper, you want to close us out? Give us a final moment of gratitude.
Yes, very thankful for people that listen, like you said, and I think maybe uniquely with this industry, we know how crazy busy everyone's schedule is, right? So for people to find the time in this industry to carve 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever to listen to us, it means even more, because we know how precious that time is. If you're not working, how you're trying to, recuperate for the next time you're working. So very grateful for that. But yes, I'll bring it home and just say I'm grateful for all of you all on here with us, because it truly has been such an amazing time. And it's funny, we were talking at this latest planning meetings in Atlanta, saying, oh yeah, we've been doing this podcast for, I don't know, something around 4 years or something. And then we went out to this bar that night and I saw my Facebook notifications. It was 4 years to that day. And it is so hard to imagine that we would still be doing this 4 years later. And I'm so grateful that we are. It fills my cup so many times.
Yeah,
I love that everyone is willing to hear out my crazy harebrained ideas and then to see them through and to make them better. But just very grateful for everyone on this team. It's been a really fun ride with you all and excited for, the journey ahead.
And great things, exciting stuff coming up. A little something fun, maybe for episode 100, or we're talking about it. But I say that, and Paul, are we able to deliver on that yet?
Yes, exciting episode 100 coming up, and then we will, have a very special, hopefully, working on that episode 101. And then it's going to be an exciting year ahead, as Dave mentioned. Definitely more ancient venues. We might do another little bonus series here or there. Always having fun exploring, talking to new people. So we know it's a huge industry and we've barely scratched the surface.
And to close out the episode, Camille, Samantha, and Megan are going to do an a cappella version of All I Want for Christmas Is You. So go ahead. No?
I don't think you want to hear that.
2, 3, 4.
Camille's editing powers are good, but they ain't that good. Hey, thank you so much for listening. Happy holidays, everybody. Follow us on social. Smash that subscribe button. All the good, usual fun. And really, again, we appreciate you and look to a lot more fun in the future. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Holidays. Wee.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.